As a black person, that is an incredibly offensive thing to even present to me as a form of rebuttal to something that has not even attempted to go down racial lines. This is not a race-led crime in the same way that the things that we were fighting for in Black Lives Matter in 2020 was. And
last night, protesters gathered in the area of Southampton where Henry Novak was murdered to protest. Things turned violent. Chairs, cans and flares were thrown at officers in riot gear. The far-right activist Tommy Robinson was there and addressed the crowd. The Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood described these scenes as totally unacceptable. Marvyn, what do you think of this?
I think this is absolutely outrageous. And I've really struggled to feel and relate to the apparent surface concerns of these individuals who have gone down to Southampton to ignite this level of rage and throwing bins at police officers and also attacking each other. I've seen so many videos of them throwing things at each other in their rage. And I just think
they would say, by way of reply, this is just another version of Black Lives Matter, but the colour's different.
As a black person, that is an incredibly offensive thing to even present to me as a form of rebuttal to something that has not even attempted to go down racial lines. This is not a race-led crime in the same way that the things that we were fighting for in Black Lives Matter in 2020 was. And actually what happened in 2020 was a culmination of incidents that were spearheaded and ended with George Floyd's murder. This whole conflation...
You don't see this as a...
I do not see it as the same...
George Floyd murder in reverse.
The George Floyd incident was about the police officers murdering multiple black people over a period of time, plus there was instances in the UK. There's a difference between a police officer murdering an individual than somebody dying in the hands of a police officer.
So there's no comparison to what happened in the UK
There is no
and in
comparison.
America. None.
And actually the conflation is actually quite ugly and inflating.
I think she repeated what you said while I think disagreeing with it.
Yes. The reason that the police forces changed their rules in this country and came up with something called a race action plan was precisely because of the George Floyd murder. And the two situations are entirely different. Our policing is not like the policing in America. For a start, our cops don't carry guns. But that's not the main thing that I want to talk about here. I want to talk about what's happened there. People are blaming Farage today and saying that he is inciting this kind of violence. No, he isn't. Let me just say something. I'm looking at the papers today. All these front pages are full of this. I'm kind of ashamed of my own profession over Henry Novak's murder and of the TV companies, because until this week, they have largely ignored it. You try and find analysis pieces on this story since December, since it happened. Nothing's happened. So all the mainstream TV stations have ignored it.
Oh, I thought that was because we didn't really know until the conviction.
No, but
This debate perfectly captures why so many people feel disconnected from modern political discussions. Instead of focusing solely on the tragic death at the centre of the case, the conversation quickly descended into arguments about race, Black Lives Matter, Nigel Farage, and broader political narratives. What should have been a serious discussion about justice, policing, and public confidence became another battleground in Britain's culture wars.
Okay.
They just weren't bothered about it. If it had been different, if it had been a white person killing a person with black or brown skin, the papers would have been full of it, and they have not been. This has been largely ignored till now. But the bottom line is, I don't know whether you guys have seen...
What are you talking about?
Let me finish my point.
A black man was murdered in Dublin by 5 security guards, right? And they put their knee on his neck and murdered him, and we all watched it happen live on our phones, right? And then that didn't get any of the remote coverage that is this particular conversation is happening right now.
But Carol makes the point, the murder of Henry Novak happened in December, and we only covered it last week.
Because we have a prime minister who, and people are slagging Nigel Farage off at the moment. He's the only politician who has addressed this for the past few months. No other politician has. Starmer.
He's a grifter, but isn't he saying what a lot of people are thinking about?
Look, he's absolutely saying
everyone has a right to be frustrated about the outcomes of it, right? There are processes. There are processes and procedures.
Let's watch what Farage said. So he said the police officer's response showed an accusation of a racial slur was treated more seriously than an act of murder, and he called for a response of pure cold rage.
But I suggest the rest of us respond to this with pure cold rage. This is wrong. Enough of anti-white prejudice. A promotion of the idea that white lives matter just as much as black lives. An end to DEI and positive discrimination, but a country that treats everybody equally and fairly before the law. This is serious. This is urgent.
Okay, now...
People,
there are no black people involved.
entitled to be raging.
Henry's father, Mark, described the police's treatment of his son as inhumane and degrading, but said he did not want the death to be used to create division.
We do not want his death to be used to create further division, hatred or tension. We want his story to make our streets safer for everyone. As the case C for the prosecution summed up in court, this is not a case about Sikhism, this is not a case about racism, this is a case about murder.
So he said that after the case.
It's also,
and
yes, but
the clip, obviously the Farage then came after that. Go on, Kat.
It's also a case about two-tier policing. I don't know whether you guys have, I'm sure you have, seen that video in its entirety. I have. And it's one of the most shocking things I've ever seen.
One of the most striking moments was the disagreement over whether comparisons to George Floyd and Black Lives Matter were relevant. Some panellists argued there was no connection whatsoever, while others insisted that concerns about policing and public trust inevitably invite comparisons. The result was a heated exchange that revealed just how divided public opinion has become whenever issues of race and policing enter the conversation. What is clear, however, is that the victim's family repeatedly called for unity rather than division. They wanted the focus to remain on the crime itself and on preventing similar tragedies in the future. Yet much of the political debate appears to have moved far beyond those wishes, becoming a wider argument about policing standards, media coverage, and alleged double standards within society. The discussion around media coverage was particularly revealing. Some argued that the case received far less attention than it deserved and suggested that different circumstances might have produced a very different media response. Whether people agree with that claim or not, it reflects a growing perception among many voters that certain stories receive greater attention than others. Perception matters in politics, and when people lose confidence that institutions are treating cases fairly, frustration inevitably grows. Nigel Farage's comments became another major point of contention. Supporters argue that he is simply expressing concerns that many ordinary people feel unable to voice publicly. Critics argue that his language risks increasing tensions and turning a criminal case into a political weapon. This disagreement lies at the heart of modern British politics, where one side sees itself as speaking uncomfortable truths while the other sees dangerous rhetoric being normalised. The debate also highlighted wider concerns about policing. Several contributors pointed to alleged failures in how officers handled the situation, arguing that these concerns deserve proper investigation regardless of political affiliation. Public confidence in law enforcement depends on transparency and accountability, and whenever serious questions emerge, authorities must be willing to provide clear answers. At the same time, others warned against using a single case to make sweeping conclusions about entire communities or ethnic groups. They argued that individual crimes should be judged on the facts rather than transformed into evidence for broader political narratives. This remains one of the most difficult challenges in modern public debate, balancing legitimate public anger with the need to avoid collective blame. Perhaps the biggest takeaway from this discussion is how quickly every major issue now becomes politically polarized. A tragedy that should unite people in demanding justice instead becomes another front in an endless ideological battle. Different commentators view the same events through completely different lenses, often reaching opposite conclusions from the same facts. For many viewers, the real question is not whether one political side won the argument. The real question is whether Britain's institutions can restore public confidence by ensuring that justice is applied fairly, transparently, and consistently. Until people feel that everyone is treated equally before the law, these debates will continue to dominate headlines and fuel political division. Ultimately, the discussion demonstrates a broader truth about modern politics. Trust has become one of the most valuable and most fragile commodities in public life. Whether the issue is policing, the media, or politicians themselves, the public increasingly demands transparency and accountability. Any perception of unfairness, whether real or imagined, quickly becomes a powerful political issue. And as this debate showed, those arguments are unlikely to disappear anytime soon.